Welcome to the Cara Michelle Show, where we break out of the matrix together and return heaven to earth. This is a place for the spiritual seekers and leaders, the dreamers and doers, the conscious creators and world changers. You can expect a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but mostly a whole lot of purpose, freedom, and sovereignty. And of course, all things quantum. May this podcast serve you in remembering the truth of who you are, all that you came here to do, and how deeply supported you are in doing it. You are incredibly powerful and your mission is protected. So it's time to dial up your frequency and recalibrate to your higher self and limitless potential. Get ready, because we're about to blast off. A new reality awaits you on the other side. I'll see you there. Hello, and welcome back. This is a really strong message that's been coming through for me the last 48 hours or so. And sometimes I get these feelings or downloads, and I know it's solely me. And other times it feels more like it's a collective thing. It feels like something that a large group of people are going through and experiencing at the same time, and it feels like this is one of those things. So today's episode is all about how the old has to die before the new can be born. And I'm going to be focusing specifically on navigating the unknown and tapping into surrender and finding safety in surrender. Because what I'm picking up on, this is for anyone who right now feels like they're in between worlds or in between timelines, in between chapters. We could look at it in so many different ways. But it's basically that feeling of, I don't really belong where I once was, and things are changing, but I don't quite feel like I'm fully in that next chapter or where I'm meant to be. And it's like the void. And that's what was coming through for me very strongly last night and this morning was the void. And this feeling of, for me, it feels very peaceful, but I was reflecting on one of the first big experiences with that 3 years ago and how it wasn't quite as peaceful and it was a little bit intimidating to be in it. And that's why I want to speak to this, because a lot of times the void and that feeling of being in between two worlds is because your huge quantum leap is about to take place. And what is happening is that a lot of the old things that are misaligned to where you're going or who you're becoming, they have to fall away in order for you to get there. And in order for you to align and step into where you're actually meant to be. So there's this weird feeling of this old stuff doesn't feel good anymore, or maybe the old relationships, you're starting to notice that they bring you down or they make you feel constricted or small or doubt yourself, or maybe they just don't feel like they bring out your highest self and your true self can't shine, your inner child can't play, your inner shaman or wisdom keeper cannot come through. Like you just feel like you're not able to be the full expression of yourself. And so those relationships might be at a turning point where it does get a little bit uncomfortable before you get to the other side. This might also be showing up in your career and really hitting this breaking point of, I can't keep forcing or I can't keep doing it the way I've been doing it. Something's got to give. And so embracing the surrender and embracing the unknown is actually what allows you to start to flow freely to what's actually meant for you. So when I look at what's been, oh my gosh, a grasshopper. How did you get inside? Don't mind me if I sound sidetracked over the next few minutes as I do this, but I want to also keep my train of thought as I record. So, no, we're just gonna leave him so I can pay attention here. I'm like the It's literally the dog from Up who's like, squirrel, the grasshopper. Okay, I have been in this place and I've been consciously doing it. So I want to speak to that because a lot of times this void happens unconsciously because a higher power is literally pushing you out of where you've been stuck and trying to bring you to where you're meant to be, which can feel extremely anxiety inducing when you don't fully trust that a higher power has your back. And so your ego is fighting and like, no, I've got to control it. I've got to make things happen. I'm scared to leave the comfort zone of what I've known and what's been my reality for so long and the identity that I've created. Like, if I were to leave this behind, my whole construct of myself would shatter, and that's terrifying, right? That's your ego's perspective. It's terrifying to the ego to leave behind what it currently believes to be true. So it is going to try to cling to these things or continue to shape itself and shape you to fit in. And maybe that means continuing to play smaller, continuing to settle, continuing to dim your light, to hide truths of who you are. And at some point, because you can imagine, and if you're there, you can definitely relate, at some point it gets really uncomfortable and actually painful to stay there. And that's where the really big push might come from God because you're not listening. And God's over here like, yo, it can be so much easier. It can be so much more fun. You deserve to have all the things that you're wanting to create. And I want to help you get there. So why don't you just hop on this path and let me guide you? Let me support you in it. Why are you trying to do it all on your own, bro? You don't have to. I got you. And your ego, your sense of self, and especially if you struggle to surrender or trust in that higher power, your ego is like terrified of that idea, right? Because letting go of control means lack of safety or lack of security, lack of support. Higher self and higher awareness tells you that actually the opposite is true. That actually a higher power can see everything and see what is truly meant for you and right for you way more than a limited mind can see. And as we know, and as we'll get into so much on this podcast that I'm so freaking excited about, is that our programming is always, always, always the biggest hindrance to our goals. Because your programming is what's keeping you limited in your box, your constructs, your programming of this is what I learned growing up. This is what society told me. This is what I have believed or experienced for so many years. And so I continue to create my future from how I believe things work. But that's not how it works when we tap into working with the quantum field, which is the infinite field that exists beyond time and space, the field of energy where all possibilities exist right here, right now, because there's no such thing as right here, right now, if that makes sense. Rewind it. If it doesn't, hopefully it makes more sense the second time. I think it makes sense. So when you pause that ego's need to control or that fear of what if all these things are crumbling and I'm gonna lose everything, ah, sweetheart, you're just like cracking open to receive what's actually meant for you. So the reason I'm sharing this and the reason this feels so peaceful for me in this present moment is that I've gone through so many experiences of forced surrender and then willing surrender. And I would love for you to learn from what has and hasn't worked for me so that you can surrender with more ease and allow the divine to move through you and guide you where you're meant to be. Because I promise, if you take anything from this episode and this message, please, please just be open to trusting that there is a divine power that actually has your good at heart. It's the programming that gets in the way. As I said before, it's our trauma, our wounding, our fear that it won't work, our limiting beliefs or feelings that we're unworthy of having it. And so we cling to that story. We continue to act and operate from our pain, from our trauma, from our limitation. And of course, it's going to make it a whole lot harder, a whole lot less enjoyable, and then the divine has to work like twice as hard. And sometimes I'm like, sorry, I made you work so hard on this because I was clinging so tightly to try to make things happen my way. And meanwhile, you were over here like, Kara, just take this path. It'll get you there 10 times faster and actually feel really good. And I'm like, no, it has to happen this way. And I'm banging my head against the cement wall until finally, at some point, I realize I can't keep doing that. So, this current experience is very much a beautiful void. And as I was feeling this overwhelming sensation last night, it was like I could see how many shifts have taken place in repairing old relationships. I had a beautiful conversation with my mom during the day about some healing stuff and like talking through and understanding each other better. I had, or maybe that was the day before, but same thing. And then I had a beautiful visit with my dad, and we went on the boat ride and talked about like aliens, all my favorite subjects, all these really cool things together, and just me and him. And it felt like the quality time that I've always craved and that I really deeply value with him. And then I had a really lovely dinner with him and my stepmom, and I had a beautiful day with my puppy dog. And I had just got home from my dinner with my dad, and I was walking the dog, and it was just this flood of like immense gratitude of how this current timeline is tying up so nicely for what I'm opening up and stepping into. And I looked at my dog, who, bless her heart, she's like 14 years old now. She thinks she's a puppy, but she's really getting up there, obviously. And physically, she's not as able as she used to be. And so, she's moving slowly, but she wants to play. And I was thinking of, I don't want to get myself depressed, but I was thinking about how her 14 years and like her life is coming closer to an end, and it's devastating, and is heartbreaking. But then I was thinking of like every single death brings a rebirth, and there always brings something new in that. And we don't always experience or see it immediately, but eventually we can see that those chapters closing are opening up new chapters and opening up space for whatever is next to come. So I felt this sadness for her and like deep love for her because she's my favorite dog ever. And then at the same time, I felt such an excitement for all the things I've been creating and aligning with energetically, all the things that I know are about to unfold and come into my physical reality. And it was this feeling of like, oh, I'm not trying to control things. I'm not trying to force the timing of them. I'm not feeling desperate or fearful that they won't happen. I just fully am in the present moment and in my heart and in this excitement, this true, it is like an inner child, a childlike play of like, what's gonna happen next? How's this gonna show up? Oh, I can't wait. And I'm like excited in each moment about what I'm creating for myself. And this is a major contrast to times in the past where I couldn't allow myself to feel that level of trust, and I couldn't allow myself to surrender and lean into it. And so I was in that same void, in that same middle ground, and that uncertainty of like, I know what's behind me and it doesn't feel great, and I definitely don't want to stay there, but I don't know what's in front of me, and that doesn't feel great. And I'm kind of scared to step into it because I don't know how it's going to play out, or if it's going to work, or if it's going to be a failure, a mistake, a mess up, if it's going to send me backwards, like the what ifs that can come into play. And so it's like you're straddling the timelines and you're straddling what can come next for you because you're right in the middle of both. And so you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the past, 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the future. That also can cause you to feel a little bit torn or uncomfortable. And if we try to control from that space, we just add more stress and tension. So, moral of this story is allowing yourself to sit in that void, but then allowing yourself to focus on the best case scenario. Remember, your programming is going to focus on the worst case scenario because most of us have been programmed to focus on the negative and to live in fear. So if you allow your higher self, if you allow your connection to source, if you allow your open-hearted, wide-eyed, big dreamer child self to come through in this moment of pause, and you allow yourself to play in the positive what ifs, you can truly become an incredibly powerful creator or co-creator, because I don't like to say it's like just you. The divine God is obviously very much involved in this, but you can then tap into that frequency of like, I have this blank slate, I'm standing in the void, I've got this empty canvas in front of me and a paintbrush in my hand and the most beautiful colors on the tray. And I can paint whatever I want for myself. And I can consciously choose how I want to direct my life force energy and how I want to direct my thoughts, my actions each day, how I want to see myself, and the identity that I want to be stepping into. Because I'm leaving the old identity behind, I'm leaving some of that old pain and trauma and wounding behind. So, who do I want to create myself to be? And like, let's paint that and let's have a lot of fun with it, because it's like God has been giving us and granting us the space to create anything and to truly birth a new world, a new reality, a new self. Take it how it resonates, put it in whatever level. Maybe you're just focusing on self, that's totally fine. Maybe you're like big picture vision and having a huge pivot in your mission on earth. And so you're seeing like, I can paint a new earth and I can paint the ways that I want to show up in creating that and contributing to that. So the void and the stillness and the unknown is actually one of the most beautiful places to be when you can see it that way, and when you can then become conscious of yourself and how you are navigating it. And the example I want to give is that exactly 3 years ago, August 2020, we were pre-lockdown, but there was talk about how Canada was going to completely shut borders, no flights in and out, no driving across the border, like full force lockdown is coming. And I was a few months into my really deep quantum work with my mentor and like deep initiation of totally, I was spending hours a day literally blasting my consciousness, is the best way I can explain it, because I was just deep in my subconscious programming and seeing all these things and rewriting and like releasing, and it was exhausting and really heavy and so much trauma to look at and face and things to dismantle and rewrite. But I was at this point of focusing on reality creation, which is a huge part that I do teach inside my quantum healing bundles. Shout out, check out the show notes for the link for those if you're wanting support and you're wanting like actual trainings and actual recorded hypnosis tracks to listen to. so that you can just plug in, relax, and then reprogram your subconscious. But I was deep in this reality creation work, and everything in the 3D was telling me that I was going to stay there. I was financially struggling. I was at that point in the most debt I had been in ever. 2020, Kara. Count yourself blessed because your debt got way bigger and money stress got worse, but you made it out, so it's all good. But at the time, that was like the biggest stress I had been in, or the biggest money stress I had been under. I had no clue what was coming, no ideas, zero plan. I just knew I was not going to be stuck in Canada for the winter because Canadian winters are brutal. And I knew mental health wise, it would not be healthy for me to continue to live in my mom's basement, especially during the winter. So I was focused so hard on, in this current space, how can I surrender to what is and surrender to the fact that my life feels like it's crumbling. Everything feels like it's falling apart. Nothing really feels stable or good to me right now. And how can I like work on letting that go, forgiving that, or just like not putting so much pressure on myself to fix it? And how can I lean into just surrendering to God and asking to be shown the way while simultaneously focusing on my desired reality? Even if I had no idea how I was going to create it, even if everything in the 3D, including family and friends, including media, including government, saying you can't do these things and we're not going to let you do these things, I blocked all of that out and focused on like, what is the highest excitement for me? Where's my highest timeline right now? And what would that look like? What would it feel like? What would I be thinking each day? How would I be carrying myself? So I began to create the identity and focus on the surrender, as I said, but then focus on, I'm living right off the beach somewhere, walking the beach every day. I'm surrounded by a community of like minded people who really care about animals and the planet and are spiritual, and like we can have these cool chats, and I feel seen and supported and understood in a way I haven't before. And I'm making enough money to live here and to pay off my debt, and I'm getting to help people in the process. I have the ability to continue growing my business, but not from like feeling stuck or forcing it. And none of these things, I had no physical tangible evidence that these things could happen. And it was like absolute magic how all of these things unfolded. I got hired to do some co-coaching, so that gave me steady income every month, which then allowed me to pay off 20K in credit cards while living in Los Angeles, because that opened up moving down to Los Angeles to live on a beach house, in a beach house, not on it. I wasn't living on the roof, although I did live in every single room of the 15-bedroom house. So your girl got around. But side note, and I manifested the community, the people, the job, as I said, which then took the pressure off my own business and allowed me to start to have more fun in that, in helping people and creating in a way that felt lighter, and all these things. And I remember booking the flight because I left a week after the opportunity showed up for me. And I remember booking the flight September 1st. I was going through customs at the airport. All the talk was about how you couldn't leave the country, and there was not a single problem at the airport, not a single question or mention about it. And I had just deeply, deeply held the faith that even though I had no clue what was going to be on the other side of this void, and even though I had no clue what was waiting for me, I held the faith that there was, in fact, a very loving creator who was going to bring me where I was meant to be. And that if I could just continue to work on believing I was deserving of it and I was worthy of living near the ocean, having a nice community of people, having steady income, feeling supported financially, if I could practice honing in my own identity, my own self-worth, and then if I could remain open to receive that by staying in surrender each day, trusting and ignoring the old self and the fears and the what ifs, ignoring the outside noise and programming, and being focused on what I desired, that I would be led there and I would be shown the way. So if you're currently in a state of void, if you're currently struggling with maybe letting go, releasing the tight grip of reality and saying, you know what, just show me the way. Like clearly this is exactly what I was saying to myself was clearly I am not getting there on my own. Clearly my ego does not actually know the right way to do this, because if it did, I would have already gotten there and I'm stuck. So help me, God, show me the way, move through me, and just let me be in the highest service. Let me just be most in alignment to who I am and what I'm here to do, and be my guide. And it was in that practice that everything changed for me, and that opened up crazy new timeline shift, crazy healing, and immense growth. So many things that came from that chapter. And I know without a doubt that that chapter was destined for me, but I would not have been able to make it happen even if I tried. None of it was even on my radar. Like, none of it would have been my thought of, I should move to Los Angeles. Honestly, that would probably be one of the last places I would have thought about moving at that time. So I would not have been able to plan that on my own. It was full surrender that allowed that to open up. So let this chapter close. Let yourself go through the grief and perhaps the process of the old dying away, and just hold the faith and feel deeply into your heart that the new is going to be so much better, even if you can't fully see how, or even if you can't fully see what it looks like, or what the first step is to get there, or what the 10th step or the 100th step. But if you can allow yourself to be moved, because we are all channels of the divine, that's literally what we are, right? You're a channel, you're a vessel, and the divine flows through you. That's your soul, that's your God self moving through you. So if you allow that, like let that navigate. Why wouldn't you? Let that navigate and move through you and bring you where you're meant to be. Truly, I've never once seen someone end up in the wrong place or end up being led astray when they allow the divine to guide them. It's only when our ego and our programming and our trauma guides us that we actually end up digging holes or feeling more chaotic, more stuck. So use this time, use this void to get out your paintbrush, aka sit in meditation, journal, go for a walk in nature, do something where you feel relaxed and connected to your body, practice some breath work, have a huge dance party, just become that flow state. And from that state of being, start to paint what you think would be really lovely. And maybe some of those details stay open and you're not trying to control every single detail, but you're open to how much better it could actually be than you could imagine. And invite the divine to move through this moment of the void, move through this moment of the unknown, move through this moment of deep surrender, and guide you exactly where you're meant to be. I hope this message was helpful. I hope that it meets the ears that needed to hear it, the heart and soul that needed this medicine, and just needed a little extra boost of like, it's safe to trust, and that it's really safe to trust in the unknown. So I send you so much love, And I am so excited because I know the most magical new chapter is waiting for you on the other side of this. And you're gonna look back in like a few months and be like, Kara was right. She told me this was gonna be better than I expected. And allow this moment to really start shaping and creating what you truly desire and what is truly meant for you. Because so many of us are leaving a chapter behind that was very stuck in pain and force and hustle and limitation and unworthiness. And it does get better and it does get easier and it does become more beautiful than you could ever imagine. But we've got to let that go. We've got to let the old die in order to really fully open up and embrace the new. So keep it together, keep trusting, and allow yourself to receive.